You don't have to actively love your body. I hope you don't actively hate your body. But so in the middle ground there, can you just cultivate a little bit of respect for your body?
I'm Caitlin, a former professional ballerina turned dance educator and career mentor, and this is the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I am here for the aspiring professional ballerina who wants to learn what it really takes to build a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. I'm peeling back the curtain of the professional dance world with open and honest conversations about the realities of becoming a professional dancer. Come along to gain the knowledge and inspiration you need to succeed in a dance career on your terms. Hello and welcome to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Sloan, and I am joined today by Katrena Cohea. Katrena is the founder and CEO of Different Drummer Dance, a dance studio in upstate New York, and the creator behind Your Body Image BFF on Instagram, where she encourages dancers and dance educators to think critically about dance culture and shares tips dedicated to integrating dancer wellness into dance technique. Katrena, we're going to get all into all of your work here, but I want to start from the very beginning of your dance journey today, and I'd love to hear why you took your very first dance class.
Yeah, certainly. So I actually took my first dance class because I hated gymnastics. I I wanted to dance from like a super young age. And for whatever reason, in the area that I was in, the dance studios all wouldn't take a student until they were like 6, even though my mom was trying to get me into a class. So the teachers at the time of the dance studio were like, well, have her do gymnastics. They take kids earlier. So I did gymnastics, and that was not my jam at all. I have huge respect for it, but not my jam. So finally, I like turned 6 and was allowed into a dance class. That's really what kind of started my journey, was trying to get away from gymnastics. I still can't do a cartwheel to save my life.
I could do it on one side.
It's impressive.
On a good day.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you give us some background about your dance journey and what your training was like growing up?
Sure. Yeah. Pretty much right from the get go, I was enrolled in a studio that practiced the RAD technique and syllabus. So I did RAD exams from like teeny tiny all the way up to advanced 2. And then after high school, I went off to UC Santa Barbara to be a dance major. And it just wasn't really a good fit. There was also a lot going on with my family at the time. So I left UC Santa Barbara, came back home to the Bay Area in California, where I'm from. And at that time, I enrolled in the Lines Summer Dance Intensive. And then from there, I went to San Francisco Conservatory of Dance. And I danced with them for probably about 4 years. And around that same time, I also just kind of randomly started taking flamenco classes, which was super fun and a total like 180 from my bunhead origin story. Then, funnily enough, I apprenticed to Brisas de España, which was a flamenco and Spanish dance company in the Bay Area. And then I became a company member and I danced with them for probably another 3 to 4 years. Then at that point, I kind of retired from flamenco life. I went back to the RAD and got my certificate in ballet teaching studies. And I started to teach more, got a full-time job teaching dance. And then after that, I went back to college and got my bachelor's in dance and theater. And that kind of mostly brings us up to speed. So I've really been teaching for a long time, basically, since high school. Just kind of started off slow, like many of us do, when we're trying to help out around the studio. And then it just kind of naturally progressed into being a full-time gig after I was done dancing professionally.
Did you have personal experiences in your training or in your professional career that made you want to focus on the topic of body image in dancers?
It didn't start out that way. No, it wasn't until I really started teaching full time. And when I was teaching like the whole gamut of ages, from like the littles to the teenagers and even, somewhat to like adult students, that I started realizing these kids, teens, adults are dealing with a lot of similar body image issues and like self critical thoughts that I am still dealing with. And I'm, further down my journey than like a lot of the kids and the teens were. And there was just some like red flag popped into my brain. Like, that shouldn't really be the case. It seems weird that like a kid of 6 and a kid of 16 are dealing with the same really self-critical body image things that I'm dealing with at 26 or however old I was. So once I started teaching more and seeing that pattern, that was just kind of a red flag to me that something was amiss. Also, as you get older, I think you have a different perspective, right? You have this hindsight that kind of kicks in and you realize, ooh, thinking back on the way that I was taught, I wish my director, my teacher hadn't said X, Y, or Z, or 10 years later, that still really stings. I still think about that and that hurt, and not wanting to do that for my own students, kind of fitting all those puzzle pieces together was really what kind of got me started thinking about body image and dance and how we can do better.
That's really shocking to me that you're seeing it with like 6-year-olds and that young, because I actually haven't really seen that with my young students, or maybe I'm just not aware. Maybe I haven't heard conversations. But what kind of things are you seeing with like your even really young students?
It can be little things like, I mean, little dancers usually love watching themselves in the mirror, which is wonderful. I think that's so precious and pure. But then sometimes I would see it turn into like body monitoring in kids as young as like 5 and 6, where, they're like looking at their body or maybe touching their stomach or their butt. They'll say things about like having a big booty, or even like innocently be talking with a friend, and like some sort of lyrics of a song will come up that is kind of like body objectification. And not that any kid as young as 6 would know that, but I still feel like it plants the seeds pretty early.
Mhm.
And there's also a few instances, actually more than a few instances I've had where, when you're dealing with the parents of the kids too, the parents will say things. Or I had a parent come to me and say once, like, oh, we almost didn't get to class because, we were getting on our tights and our leotard, and she just had this total breakdown about how fat she looked and she didn't want to wear the tights and the
Oh
leotard.
no.
And so it's things like that that like you don't necessarily see, but the parents will hint to you that something like that is going on, or they'll just full out, confess what happened. And things like that just break my heart. And the statistics around body image for girls, even, non dancers, show that they're starting to pick up diet talk and body monitoring as young as like 4 and 5. So it's pretty heartbreaking.
Wow. Where are they getting that from? Like from home, from school? Like where is this all starting, do you think?
I think a huge part of it, and in the research that I've done around girls and body image, a lot of it is just our pop culture. There's some statistic, I don't know off the top of my head, but something to do with the representation of young girls in TV shows or Netflix shows or movies, or not not music videos, because we don't really have those anymore. I just aged myself. Um but
I
things,
was just talking about MTV Cribs this morning at the bus stop with the other parents,
yes.
and that's really funny. Yes.
Yeah,
We're this, yeah, same page.
yeah, like snippets of that on like Kids Bop or whatever, what that you're watching on
Mhm.
Spotify. But research shows that the rates of girls being objectified, or having way less clothes on, or being portrayed in a manner that is promiscuous or slutty or just objectified, is way higher than it is for boys. So I think a lot of it just comes from being a woman, a girl in our culture. A really interesting thing to do the next time that you're at Target or Walmart or whatever is just kind of look around the clothing in the young girls section and see how much of like the graphic tees or even the colors are quote unquote feminine, or have graphics or captions on it about like cute and I know it, or things that have to do with looks, versus the boys' clothing, which has like superheroes and, is more about like being physically powerful, versus girls looking a certain way. It's just kind of an interesting experiment.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And my daughter, she loves wearing her brother's hand-me-downs because they have cool superheroes or stuff like that on them. And she loves that. She wants to run fast. She wants to be like a hero. Like there's nothing that says girls can't do that. But when you're in a store, you're totally right. You're not seeing options like that in the girls section.
Yeah. And it's sneaky too, because I think we're all just so used to it. We don't necessarily stop and think about what the implications are around that further down the road. But, if young girls grow up only seeing clothing options that reinforce what they look like, then that just plants seeds and they go to school and that's reinforced in maybe the relationships that they have with other kids in school or other teachers. It's kind of everywhere when you really stop and get curious and start to think critically and dissect what you're seeing, and then wear the glasses of being a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old girl and really think about the messages that they're getting.
Hmm. Dance competition season is upon us, and if you're looking for a competition that's about artistry, performance, and growth, not just the trophy, then you need to check out Étoile Dance Competition. Étoile is a concert dance competition open to everyone, including beginners, pre professionals, and adults, with inclusive leveling that makes it possible for anyone to score in the top overalls. And every dancer gets more than just a score. H12 provides audio and video critiques in performance, technique, choreography, and overall impression so you can truly grow from your experience. Something unique to A12 that I love is the opportunity for dancers to start the day off right with master classes taught by A12's esteemed panel of judges, all with professional dance backgrounds and teaching experience. Plus, every event includes a group contemporary performance with a chance to hone audition skills and build community with other dancers. This competition is truly something special. And right now, podcast listeners can get 10% off their registration with code BRAINY10. If you want a competition that emphasizes artistry, provides real actionable feedback, and celebrates dancers of all levels, head to a12comp.com or find the link in the show notes to register today. So you have a new resource out with another friend of the pod, Nicole Sabella, called Love Your Body or Don't. So can
Yes.
you share more about this toolkit and just the title, how you came up with that?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of funny because I did a little story on Instagram, like a poll on what comes to mind when you hear the phrase love your body. Do you feel like, oh, yeah, totally, I love my body? Does it make you feel like a little awkward or insecure, or do you hate it? And I think the majority of people who responded in the poll said that they were just kind of like, ah, I don't really get it. Like, it's a nice sentiment, but okay, like it's kind of vague. It's a little reductive. I don't really know what to do with it. So that was one of the things that kind of prompted me to want to put together a resource. But the materials that Nicole and I developed are meant to be really user friendly for dance teachers because both Nicole and I are teachers. So it's a 5-day toolkit that helps your dance students rewire how they think about, how they participate in your dance classes so that body image isn't a barrier in your dance classes. It's not a barrier to your dancers engaging or focusing or feeling confident in their own skin, because both Nicole and I know that it can be such a fraught topic and it can be really difficult and tricky to kind of bring up in dance classes. And so many dance teachers, I think, don't want to say or do the wrong thing because it is such a fraught topic. So we were really hoping to kind of level the playing field and put dance teachers at ease and give them really simple, effective tools to use with their dance students that are also time efficient, because we know all dance teachers are pressed for time. You've got like those precious 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever. And so often you feel like you have to hit the ground running. But these are like 5 minute, 10-minute max practices that you can use with your dancers to just set them up for success. It doesn't have to be, this big overhaul to your teaching. You can start with little baby steps. Nicole talks a lot about tapping and EFT. That's her zone of genius. I talk a lot about mindset and journaling and ways that you can help your dancer reframe how they're thinking about themselves and their bodies in dance. And then hopefully that helps teachers as well, so they're not running into extra challenges like a dancer not wanting to come because she had a meltdown before class because she had to put on tights and a leotard.
Can you expand some more on why the message to love your body can feel so alienating for people in general and especially dancers?
I think it comes from a really good place. Its intention is usually pure, but it's actually really vague. And I think a lot of dance teaching language is vague and unintentionally. I don't think that dance teachers ever are trying to give feedback that's vague, but things like leave it at the dance floor or now do it with feeling, like they just become so commonplace in our dance teaching language that sometimes I think we just say those things because our teachers said them to us, but we don't really stop to think about, okay, well, what do I actually want my student to do right now? When I say love your body, what does that actually mean? What does that look like for them? And also, when you say love your body, it doesn't really give dancers or dance teachers any room to explore the vast majority of other feelings a dancer is going to experience in their body. Just looking back on my own dance training, the qualities that I felt most often in dance class were usually along the lines of like frustration or anger or disappointment that I couldn't do something that I wanted to do. And of course, there's a lot of joy and fun wrapped up in there, but there's so many more feelings that a dancer is going to experience in their dance journey besides just loving their body. And for sure, loving your body can be a great goal, but we also need practical and realistic tools to use on the days and the seasons of life where we don't love our bodies.
What are some of the practical tools we can use to shift from being in a place of body positivity only to also incorporating some body neutrality or some just general respect for our bodies?
Yeah. Well, kind of like we already talked about, I think being mindful and being curious is a great place to start because that doesn't feel super overwhelming because body image is such a big topic. And like we said, such a fraught topic. Just being curious and kind of approaching it like a fun kind of experiment can be a little bit more approachable. So just being curious about like the language that you find yourself using about your own body or other bodies. Another kind of fun experiment, which might be a little shocking once you do it, but the next time you find yourself like scrolling on your phone, just as an experiment, notice how many posts mention a woman's body, and is the language positive? Is it negative? What kind of words are being used? Who is using those words? And maybe one of the most important things to think about is who's benefiting from the talk about this person's body. What's the point of critiquing this person's body? And I find that after we start to spend some time being curious and noticing those things, it'll just start to add up in your brain. You'll start to make connections and notice things. And if you're anything like me, then noticing those things is really what the impetus is to start changing your own language and just to continue to be more aware. And I love that you mentioned respecting our bodies because that's a huge one. I mean, that's always my go-to advice for dance teachers or dancers is you don't have to actively love your body. I hope you don't actively hate your body. But so in the middle ground there, can you just cultivate a little bit of respect for your body? And one of my favorite ways to do this is to do an exercise called a day in your body. with my dancers. So you can either do this like verbally as like a quick little chat, or you can have them journal about it. There is a resource specifically about this in the Love Your Body materials. But a day in your body is kind of exactly what it sounds like. You just have the dancer either talk about or journal what their day was like. But instead of it being, I went to school, you're thinking about the things that your body did. So I walked to school, or I rode my bike, or I sat on the bus, but I listened to music and I talked with a friend. All of those things just kind of shift the focus back to like, you have this amazing vessel that we so often just take for granted because it does its job so well. It pumps air into our lungs and walks and takes us places. We listen to our friends or we listen to music. We talk with other people. So, shifting the focus from just like, oh, I did these mundane things, I went to dance class, shifting it to, I went to dance class and I used my quads, I used my butt, I jumped, I, built muscles in my core. I could really feel my upper body moving. I listened and there was this beautiful music. It just gives a whole new kind of perspective and also appreciation and hopefully respect. After doing this, you should kind of have this moment of like, oh, yeah, like my body does do all of these amazing things without me asking it to. And that's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of dancers, you go through a period of injury or something like that, and that's when you realize, like, wow, I would just give anything to be able to do a releve right now, or something so simple that you take for granted, and you start to appreciate that more. And you tell yourself, like, it's like when you're sick and you're like, when my nose isn't stuffy anymore, I'm gonna never take for granted being able to breathe again. And then you do, it's like, it's normal. And I think for dancers, same thing. You think when you're injured, like, I will always appreciate being able to do things. And then you get to a place where you kind of lose that. So I really like that daily practice of checking in. And even going back to the social media topic, I think it's really important for people when you're scrolling, like you said, to notice how much people are financially profiting off you hating your body.
Mm.
And realizing like the posts that are making you feel bad about yourself, it's because they want to sell you something. Once you realize it, you can't unsee it. And it makes all of it kind of shift in your brain to like, they want me to hate my body so they can make money off of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sickening to say, but our culture and system is built around making money off of not feeling good about ourselves. And that's really sad, but also so empowering once you realize that. And then you can start redirecting your attention, redirecting your dollars to the things that do make you feel better and do the same for others as well. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because that's an important part of this conversation too.
What are some of the common messages that you hear in the studio, either from teachers or from dancers, that you wish we'd kind of re-examine? And can you maybe even give some examples of how you might rephrase things for teachers? Because like you said, we hear things in our training and it's hard to know maybe if we should replace that with a different phrase or just leave it alone. Like, what would you say is a good way to communicate?
Oh, I can for sure I can for sure expound on a lot of topics and mindsets that I find are not helpful. One that is kind of indirectly about bodies that really gets my blood boiling pretty quick is when dance teachers or directors or choreographers will say things like, well, this is how it was back in my day. My teacher said X, Y, and Z to me, or I was weighed publicly, every week in class, and we just got on with it and accepted it. I really can't handle that mindset because saying this is the way that we've always done it is quite literally the opposite of progress. I mean, just imagine for a second if, like, along the spectrum of human evolution, if we were just like, no, we've always done it this way. We're good.
We've always just lit candles. We don't
Exactly.
need electricity.
Yeah, right. Like, we don't need penicillin. We've died this way forever. It's okay. It just is mind-boggling to me that we don't apply that logic to dance sometimes. So, yeah, I have no patience for the we've always done it this way. This is the way that my teachers did it with me, and I turned out fine. My follow up argument to that would always be like, but did you turn out fine? So that's a big one for me. And I know it can be hard to let go of, some of those things that are so much a part of our dance identity. And there is a lot of gray area where, maybe you do have really fond memories of your dance teacher. And they also engaged in practices that were not really all of that great or helpful. Those two things can be true at the same time. And you can also make space for today's generation of dancers or dance educators who are asking or demanding for things to be different. It can all be true all at the same time. And I know that's easier said than done, but hopefully that's something that we can all kind of work towards. And I think another really sneaky thing that has more to do with dancers' bodies is focusing on what movement should look like rather than what it should feel like, because we've all grown up in these dance studios where there's mirrors everywhere and we were wearing the pink tights and the leotards. So much of dance and ballet specifically does have to do with mirrors and what things should look like. But that also misses an opportunity to help a dancer get really curious about what movement should feel like. And it also disrupts that idea that movement only looks one way. So when we focus on trying to make a student live up to what a movement should look like rather than what it should feel like, we're not taking into account that dancer's unique body. And it can be much more beneficial, not only from a body image standpoint, but from an artistry standpoint, to work with a dancer to figure out what the movement feels like for their body and what's functioning, what's firing, what muscles they're using. That's kind of a much deeper way of working that benefits that dancer personally. It benefits their body image, their resilience, and their artistry. And I also think it kind of cuts down on comparison, which is another huge monster in the dance world.
Just from a very practical standpoint of like wanting to train dancers, when you have dancers who are so focused on what it looks like, they can create really beautiful pictures, but the movement quality is often missing, or the function is often missing, or the transitions, because there's what one moment looks like, but then the in-betweens don't always work the way, like you're saying. If you can talk about what is actually firing, how are we using our muscles, you're going to dance better. It's not just like, I feel like I hear so much from teachers. I've seen a lot of this rhetoric lately of like, oh, this generation is soft and like we're coddling them, we're not pushing them hard enough. And I feel like you can do both, but I don't know quite how to express that sometimes. Maybe it's not an argument that I need to be having with people on the internet, but it is one of the things I agree, I'm passionate about it. I want both for my dancers, right? I don't want them to have to go through some of the things that I went through. And I don't think that they need to in order to be great dancers and great people.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that I thought of as I was listening to you was the implications of injury prevention are then like totally. I can just imagine how much we would cut down on injuries if this was really the way that we focused on teaching our dancers, was from a more individual anatomy based science, which there is more and more of, and that's fantastic. But that rhetoric that you're talking about of like dancers these days, they're not made of the same stuff that we are. Like, I have certainly noticed that. I don't like it. I don't agree. And it's really tricky to know how to meet that conversation from a place of wanting to understand, but also I'm not sure even exactly like what the right word is.
I know. It's so interesting because I feel like as a parent and as a dance teacher, like I am approaching things differently than maybe, my dance teachers did or even my parents did. And I think even conversations I've had with my parents, like there's things they've said to me like, wow, I really like how you're doing this. Like, this is really great. We see your kids' emotional intelligence. Like, they're always really amazed by how well our kids can communicate their feelings with words. And they're 2 and 5, and they can say to you, hey, I'm feeling really sad about something, and tell us what it is. Like, That's pretty incredible. How can I be hating on this method of parenting when, you know what? The other thing is too, like, it is more work on the teacher and the parent to
Yeah.
meet the kids where they are and to recognize that they are kids without fully developed brains. They're not tiny adults. They
Yeah.
are kids. Historically, we've treated kids like tiny adults
Yeah.
without recognizing that they are still developing and that we have to treat them like they're children. And not that we need to like talk down to them or baby talk. Like I talk to my kids and my students very, I don't dumb it down for them,
Mhm.
but I give them age appropriate tools.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like instant resistance when we're talking about dance teachers or even just the mindset of like, oh, gentle parenting is
Mhm.
stupid or, gentle dance teaching, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. I think that initial resistance has a lot to do with people feeling like attacked or
Mm.
well, I turned out this way and I'm fine. And it's hard. It is hard not to feel attacked sometimes, but I think we all just have to kind of take what works for us and like a little bit of this practice, a little bit of that practice. I'm with you. Like, I am all about being clear and effective with my communication to my students. There's a piece of advice that I got for my personal life that I try and apply to my dance teaching practice, which is to be clear is to be kind. Probably earlier in my teaching career, yeah, I maybe would have spoken more harshly or said things that my teacher would have said to me just because I didn't know any better. And then I probably also went through a phase where I wasn't super clear and I was trying to be overly cautious with what I was saying. Again, because I didn't want to hurt a kid or give them a complex. So 20 years from now, I get an email saying, oh my God, you ruined my life because you said X, Y, and Z. So we're always going to be bouncing back and forth between these different practices, these different ideals and mindsets. And I think that's good and that's okay because it makes us continue to think and evolve our teaching practice. If a teaching practice is stagnant, it's bad, in my opinion. I don't
Yeah.
think teaching practice should ever be stagnant. We need to keep learning. We need to keep considering other points of views and other ways of teaching and doing things and speaking because that's what keeps us growing as humans and that's what keeps us evolving as dancers. So I hope that it can be a little bit of all of the various different opinions and ways of teaching and figuring out what works best for us personally and what our students respond best to.
Mhm. And realizing that that's different every day, honestly.
Mhm.
Like, personally, I need different things every day from people in my life, and that can be different for your students every day. And I think that is something I have to remind myself is that it's not just a one size fits all per student, per class, per day, per year. It's always changing.
Yeah.
Does the mere thought of audition season make your palms start to sweat? Do you feel completely overwhelmed with getting everything together on top of your regular dancing schedule? I've been there, and I totally get it. As dancers, we spend hundreds of hours honing our technique and artistry. But when it comes to figuring out how to put together a resume or what to expect in a professional audition, we're often left to figure it out ourselves. That's why I put together the Ultimate Audition Guide. This is your one stop shop for everything you need to tackle professional company auditions with ease. No more spending hours Googling and trying to piece together a somewhat coherent audition package. With this guide, you'll be ready to conquer audition season like a true professional. We're talking resumes, headshots, dance photos, dance reels, plus info on how to find auditions, what to wear, what to expect, how to budget, mindset tips, you name it, it is in this guide. You are ready for this moment. Head to the show notes, grab your copy of the Ultimate Audition Guide, and empower yourself with the knowledge to approach audition season like a true professional. But I am curious, what are some of the practical ways that you in a daily class are integrating the wellness with the technique? We talked about, talking about the feeling versus the look. Are there any other strategies that you use to really put these two together as opposed to having to like separate the two things?
Yeah, that's a really great question because I think I've been doing it for so long now where I just kind of integrate everything that it just feels like second nature to me, which I hope is encouraging for other
Mhm.
teachers out there. I think there's small ways that I do it and medium and big ways. Like one of the things that comes to mind for just a small way is to take 5 minutes at the beginning of class and hear how my students' days were before we start class, or letting that kid who came rushing into class, stuffing their mouth with a snack because they just got into class from school or someplace else, is like giving them 5 minutes to eat the snack and nourish their body before like rushing them into class and making them get to work right away. It's medium sized things like the language that we talked about, and kind of pausing before I give feedback. And instead of saying, like, oh, that line was beautiful, I might normally, or like was said to me, slowing down and saying, I can see that you really worked to extend to that line and nice job. Like, I appreciate your effort. So that shift in language shows a little bit more of me praising the dancer for their effort and their focus rather than for looking a certain way. It can be big things like telling a dancer to take a week off because I know that they are struggling mentally or physically, even if it's during a performance week or if it's during dress rehearsal week. That would have never happened in my world. Like if I was really struggling mentally or physically, my dance teachers loved me for sure and wanted me to be okay, but you just didn't do that. You showed up and you did the thing for dress rehearsal or performance.
I have vivid memories of in my first professional company of dancers literally throwing up in the dressing room and then going to do snow because the flu was going around the company and dancers called in sick and they said, no, like you have to come.
Yeah.
Like to that extent. And it is hard because I am like, I actually have resistance when you said that to being like, oh, I'm missing dress rehearsal, missing performance. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's you're like, I had a lot of resistance to that. But I do have memories of also people like physically sick and having to run on stage and like having puke buckets in the wings, that being normal, like that should not be normal.
Right. And I get the resistance too, because there's things that like people will say to me, or like having conversations with people and they'll be like, oh no, like you have to, you have to be at dress rehearsal. But there is a fine line, I think, that we can find between like showing up and respecting the art form and what we committed to doing, and also still honoring what our mental and physical health needs. And like we said before, I think that's going to change depending on the situation and what's going on. But I think we have to be open to it instead of just saying, no, it's dress rehearsal. Like, get your ass to class.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, so if you had a student who you felt needed, they couldn't come to dress rehearsal, would you still be comfortable with them performing in the performance? Because that's always my thing. I'm like, if you miss dress, I personally wouldn't want to go on stage
Yeah,
and perform if I didn't go to dress. I'd be really freaked out as a professional dancer,
right.
right? So I can't imagine what a student would feel like having not been on the stage before and not having done their tech rehearsal and their blocking and everything, and then all of a sudden just being on stage for a show. Like, how do you
Yeah,
manage that?
it's tricky, I think. And this kind of goes to one thing in my teaching philosophy too, which is sometimes magical things happen when we let go of control. And even though dance culture and dance tradition dictate, like, you go to dress, you go to tech, you have to fulfill all these requirements before you get to the stage. And there is good reason for that, for sure. Sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. Life happens, mental health happens, injuries happen. So while I am totally a supporter of the discipline and the showing up and the committing to your commitment or being held accountable for your role, whether you're a professional dancer or a student, sometimes it's also really fun and cool when we don't follow the rules completely when it comes to teaching. And we say, okay, well, you missed tech, you missed dress. Like, it's not ideal, but do you think you can do it? Or what's your plan for making this work? Like, it's okay to share some of that responsibility with the student too. And sometimes really cool things happen. And sometimes it can also be a disaster on stage, but maybe that's the learning experience that that student needs to be able to get them to the next level or the next stage in their training, or to be able to overcome some sort of mindset block that was making it challenging for them to show up and do the things that we were asking of them. I don't know
Yeah.
if that really answered your question.
Yeah, no, I'm I'm really struggling with this one. And I think when you said breaking the rules, I was like, oh, because I am type A, Enneagram 1, like rule follower justice, kind of person. So I'm like, well, that's not fair. If you miss that, you shouldn't get to perform. I think it is like good to be clear. Like, we're not saying, oh, you just felt like going over to your friend's house to play
Yeah,
that day instead of going to dress rehearsal. So now you get to be in the show. Like, to be clear, like, it's very circumstantial and it's not like anything goes. And that's the argument some teachers are having, that they think that, like, if we're being mindful of dancers' physical and mental health, then we're just saying, do whatever you want.
right.
That's not the case. There's
No,
still boundaries. There's still accountability. It's not just like, oh, you didn't feel like it today. Okay, fine.
right.
Things happen, and can we like take each situation individually and say, okay, in this situation, what has the dancer showed us up until now? Because I have a dancer who hasn't come to class for 6 weeks and then doesn't come to tech and dress. I'm not going to put him on stage, right? Like, I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. That's not fair to you or to your classmates.
Yeah,
Like, if they've been to every single class, I know they know their dance. Something crazy happens. They were in a car accident on the way to tech rehearsal. They had to miss, but they show up for the show. And I know that they know what they're doing. It's like, okay,
yeah.
having that mindset of things happen. Like you said, life happens.
Right. No, it's definitely, I'm not coming at it from a place of like, we make all these excuses for the kids or the parents who just show up willy-nilly or, don't think that there's any accountability or responsibility. But I think it's also interesting if we take a situation like this, which is, I mean, all at this point, all theoretical, but
Yes.
let's continue to play it out, right? Like you said, okay, there's a dancer who's been to rehearsal, she's been to class, she's doing all the things. Something weird, some freak accident happens, she can't come to dress, she can't come to tech, whatever. So then let's follow that out with the idea that we are acting like all of the dance teachers traditionally before us and saying to this kid, nope, that was it. That was your one chance. You're done. So now, in my mind, what plays out is that this kid now has a terrible experience with dance. Not only are they injured or potentially traumatized from this car accident or whatever it was that happened, but now this thing that they've been working towards, they suddenly can't do anymore because something out of their control happened. So now they walk away from dance. They hate dance. They never go back to another dance class. Maybe they have kids. They don't pass on that love or appreciation of dance. And that's just sad. Like, what a missed opportunity?
Yeah, and I think that is a big part of remembering that so much of what is going on with our students is out of their control a lot of the times. Like, when our students are late, my 6-year-old students, they didn't drive themselves. Like,
Yeah.
maybe they were dilly-dally, but I also have little kids. I know how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
We can start getting into the car an hour before we need to leave, and we can still be late sometimes. So I feel like I've had a lot more compassion for students being
Mm.
late than I used to before having kids, because I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
As dance educators, one thing that I've really learned is that I used to be, I think in general, my personality is very black or white. And that's something I've had to really work on in my life, of like having some gray area. And as a dance teacher, especially, life is never black or white. There's always some shade of gray in between. And I do agree that clear is kind. And I am really passionate about having clear expectations and clear boundaries for my students. I know they rise to the occasion if they know what's expected of them, and if I give them the support and the tools to be able to get there. And I also can recognize that there are times when we have to assess each situation individually and come to an individual conclusion about how to proceed based on that specific situation. But this was an interesting conversation because I was surprised at how much resistance that I just had to that idea, and to even talking through that, I immediately wanted to shut it down because it just felt so backwards to what I know. And
Yeah.
I can get so frustrated when I think people in the dance world aren't being progressive and aren't moving dance into the 21st century. And then realizing that, we all have our biases and we all have the way that we've been trained. And I just appreciate that we could talk about it and share our opinions in a really respectful and kind way.
What I love about what we just did too was that it was a two-way conversation. And I totally understand coming from the place of like, nope, this is the way it is. These are the rules. Because I was that person and I was that dancer and dance teacher for so long. I just, my experiences and all of that have kind of turned me into a dance teacher that is not that way anymore. And that goes back to what we were saying about a teaching practice that is evolving and not stagnant, and you're constantly learning and taking in new ideas and, mulling them around and figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Katrena, last question for you. If you could give one message to young dancers who are struggling with body image, what would you tell them?
Oh, I would tell them that they're not alone, that it's totally normal to be experiencing what they're experiencing, and that while it might not feel like it, on the flip side of feeling really terrible about yourself and your body, the flip side of that is that you can find more peace and more respect for your body and with your body and feel like you are on the same team as your body as opposed to constantly fighting with your body, even though that reality might feel really far away and impossible. It can happen. So hang in there and listen to yourself. I mean, to kind of call myself out here, I think one of the, those pieces of advice, like listen to your body, which is well intentioned and well meaning, is also still kind of vague. Like, we can't expect dancers to listen to their bodies if we've never taught them how to listen to their bodies. And if we're so busy telling them to come to class 6 times a week and do Pilates and strength training and eat 700 grams of protein and like, if we're telling them to do all of these things without leaving space for them to calm down and settle and really figure out what it does mean to listen to their own body, then we're doing them a disservice. So we have to figure that out as dance teachers as well and be okay with that gray space of like, okay, what works for this student isn't going to work for this student, and being okay with that, because like you said earlier, it's not a one size fits all.
Exactly. This has been such a great conversation. If anyone listening wants to learn more about you or about your new resource, where can we find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Your Body Image BFF, or you can also follow Nicole Sabella. She's at nicole.e.sabella, and either one of us can hook you up with it. You can learn more about the resource through Instagram posts. There's links in bio and all of that fun Instagram jargon, but that's the best way to find that stuff.
Perfect. And I'll put all of that into the show notes as well. But thank you so much for this conversation,
Thank
Katrena. I
you.
really enjoyed chatting with you and I really appreciate your time today.
Yes, I loved chatting with you. Thank you for taking the time and for everything that you're doing.
Thank you for tuning in to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. If you found this episode insightful, entertaining, or maybe a bit of both, I would so appreciate you taking a moment to leave a rating and hit subscribe. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll join our community of dancers passionate about building a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. Plus, your ratings help others discover the show too. I'll be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, be sure to follow along on Instagram at The Brainy Ballerina for your daily dose of dance career guidance.